Hi friend, my name is Danielle Holleran and I am the host of the Detail Diary podcast. I'm a self-made online business owner who loves sharing the behind the scenes of my business and inspiring others to follow their dreams. You can find me most days chasing my dog around, relaxing with my husband, and wearing basically anything Dusty Rose and Pearls. Think of this as your space to come to feel motivated and inspired to take on your biggest dreams, while also just chatting with your best friend. Cozy up for some girl time and get ready to feel uplifted and inspired. I'm so excited to announce that my very own podcasting platform, Zencaster, has become a new sponsor to the Detailed Diary podcast. You can check out my exclusive discount link in the show notes below this episode, and stay tuned to hear all about why I love using Zencaster for my podcast. Hello and welcome to the Detailed Diary podcast. I'm your host, Danielle Holleran, and today I'm joined by a very special guest. I have Melissa Guller of Wit Wire on the podcast. We're going to chat all through online course creation, back-end business things, and all the goodness. So I'm so excited to have you on the podcast today. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me. I can't wait for all the goodness.
If you want to just start off by giving the listeners just maybe a brief background of you, your business, and just a little introduction.
Sure. So I often joke that I never knew what I wanted to be when I grew up, but I had my own journey from being a music major in college through working in corporate event production, education tech startups here in New York, and then eventually working my way into course creation. And I never could have seen any part of my career coming. But I feel really fortunate to have had the opportunity to teach classes at General Assembly here in New York, and then to work for Ramit Sethi. He's a New York Times bestseller, has a huge, at the time, 50-person remote company. And then I worked for Teachable, the online software that a lot of people use to create and sell their own online courses. And so each stop on that career journey led me to this point where now I run my own online business called Wit Wire, where I help creators turn their skills and passions into profitable online businesses. So it feels like I've been so fortunate to sit in all these different seats in the business. And I'm just so excited to talk more about course creation since I know how much, cheesy as it sounds, it has had a real positive change and a huge impact on my life.
Oh, definitely. It's so interesting just speaking to other business owners just to see everyone's background. And I always just find it so fascinating how like so many of us, we don't set out on this like one goal and one path. There's so many things that like happen along our journey and in our life that lead us to our business in the position that we're in. And I just always find it so interesting. Now, your time at Teachable, is that something that really opened your eyes to course creation? Because I'm sure it's so interesting working on like the back end of that platform and then transitioning over to what you're doing now.
I would say my eyes first felt opened when I worked for Ramit. I had read his book, I Will Teach You to Be Rich, and then I saw he was hiring. And at that time, I was managing it was a 15-person team. We were all around the world, but mostly in the US. And we were doing 12 to 18 course launches per year. We're talking like 8 figures from just course sales alone. And I could not believe people were willing to pay $2,000 for an online course. That was just absolutely mind blowing to me. So I learned a ton being in that side of the business, a very successful course creator. But then what I loved about switching over to Teachable is you got to see many different businesses, thousands of people doing all kinds of courses from drone flying, watercolor painting, raising goats. I eventually ended up pitching the CEO on having Teachable's podcast, which I went on to host and produce for 2 years. And just speaking with the diverse array of course creators from literally all over the world, it really opens your eyes to see not only have a lot of these careers that we've been told are not profitable, now they are profitable, like art, writing, you really can earn a living online. And I think it also debunked a lot of the myths that having an online business was scammy. I don't know if anyone else can relate. It kind of felt like there was a phase where saying you ran an online business was almost like a taboo. And I think over the last few years in particular, more and more people are seeing that not only is it not a scam, but it is a great way to earn a real living and have a lot more flexibility in your life too.
It's so true. And there's so many vast opportunities now online. I feel like even just over the past few years, like things have just exploded and really bloomed for so many different people to really just find their groove and find what works for them within their online business, regardless of what they do. Kind of like how you mentioned, it must have been so interesting going from like such a wide scale, insane course creation job to moving to Teachable, where you're seeing people from all ends of life truly. And it probably just opened your eyes to think like, wow, I never even, thought that course creation or an online teaching could be applied to like this wide of subjects among business owners. So I know for me, like even starting my business, I never thought that I would kind of fall into the area of education and teaching other people until it kind of happened. And there really is room for it in so many industries because everyone always wants to learn, which I think is just such a wonderful thing.
Definitely. And I think what stops a lot of people from creating courses, and these were trends that we heard about a lot when I was working at Teachable. I held a few different jobs. It was a startup of just 35 people when I joined. So you wear a lot of hats.
Uh-huh.
But then by the time I left, I was the director of marketing and we were doing all the email campaigns, summits, Black Friday, like any of those promotions. If anyone's familiar with Teachable, those were under my team. But I also produced all of the curriculum that they have for some of their paid customers to help them launch courses. And there were so many trends. People are afraid to be on video. They worry that they don't have the expertise needed to be a course creator because they're not like a guru in something. And I think there's also hesitation where you see someone else doing your idea and then you think, oh, they're bigger than me. They were already there first. That means that I can't do it. But I think hopefully this is a helpful mindset shift. Like if you see people talking about your topic, that's great. That just means that you've validated demand that somebody out there is willing to pay for what you want to talk about. And the thing that'll be special about your course is the way that you teach, your personality, your style, your own personal background. So hopefully maybe that could be useful for people. Because I know when I look out on the internet, it just feels like it's becoming more and more crowded every day. I know I'm not, I doubt my own expertise too. You just feel like, oh gosh, everyone knows what I know. But I guarantee there are people out there who are really craving the knowledge that you have. And it's just a matter of finding them.
Hmm. I could not agree more. I talk all the time about personal brand and how important it is just to be yourself because yes, in any industry you're in, there's always going to be someone doing the exact same thing. Like that's just life, and it shouldn't be something to stop you from doing something that you love and that you're passionate about. And the one thing that's going to set you apart is you personally. No one has the same unique experience and background and just experiences that you do, and bringing that to the table is just that enough to differentiate you from whoever else down the line that you may be comparing yourself to. And I think that definitely plays into online teaching and course creation as well, because I'm sure that's something that holds a lot of people back, and imposter syndrome. And for you, what do you think it takes just getting started for someone to say, all right, I think I'm ready to jump into this industry and start diving into online course creation? Because I think people think it takes a lot more and a lot more standards than it actually does.
I agree. I think what holds a lot of people back when they see other courses out there is there's a big difference between how I think new course creators can get their course off the ground more quickly versus what you see. You might see Facebook ads, webinars, challenges, big email lists. I think that courses are marketed as a game for bigger players. But I totally disagree. I draw back on my early days, not even just with Wit and Wire, but the very first way that I earned money as my own business was when somebody came to one of my in person Excel classes. And at the end, they asked me if I offered tutoring. And I hadn't before, but I said, sure, let me get back to you with my rates. And then I went home and I Googled rates and I emailed them the next day. And then all of a sudden, I'm in business. And I think when it comes to course creation, if you have a lot of people in your life, even a few people asking, hey, how did you do that? And you start to see these little breadcrumbs where people are asking you about your expertise, that could be an indicator that you're onto either a service or a course idea. And then if you're already a service provider, you may start to notice that as you deliver the same packages over and over, there is a set system that you've already created. Maybe you didn't even call it a system, but you're taking people through the same process every time. And so if you're selling any kind of successful service, you already have the course idea. And then in my own programs, I talk about what I call a course life cycle, where in the very first phase, instead of jumping ahead, doing the big webinar, doing all these big things, What if you shift your mindset a little and think about how can I get paid to develop this curriculum? And then you treat it more like a small group program almost where you get your founders in, I call them your founding members, and then you give them a great experience. And then you actually avoid one of the biggest risks I think course creators take, which is that most people develop the entire course and then sell it later. But that's so risky for two reasons. Number one, you don't know if it'll sell. And number two, you don't know if it'll work. So by shortcutting that amount of time, by telling people, hey, I'm going to do this new thing, it's starting on this date, would you be interested in joining? Being very transparent about it. And then you get paid to develop that curriculum, that gets you past both of those hurdles. You know people will pay, and you know the curriculum works because they're giving you feedback along the way.
I love that idea so much because I know even personally, I've gone the route of like spending so much time pouring my like time and energy and knowledge into a course and then launching it and I'm so excited and then it's just like crickets. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like this, oh, like I have so much valuable information. How is this not translating? And I think that that scares a lot of people away because creating a resource like this, obviously, it's very time consuming and you don't want to waste that time if you don't know on the end, like, is this going to be profitable? Like, how do I know if it's going to be profitable or not? So, I'd love to chat a little bit more on one, trying to figure out to weigh, the types of ideas that you have about course, what type of course that you would like to launch profit wise, trying to figure out like what may be profitable for your own business and your life cycle of courses approach, because I think that that is such a wonderful outlook, especially if you're just starting and testing out the waters getting into all of this.
Yeah, let's start with the profitable idea. I think any topic, any category, any niche, there is a profitable course idea waiting for you there. But a lot of people market courses like Instagram tips, parenting tips, running tips. And most people day to day are not thinking, oh, do you know what? I want tips. Instead, they're coming up against something in their life where they have a problem and they want it to be solved. They're thinking to themselves, my body feels really out of shape. I don't like the way that it feels today. I think I might need to start moving or doing something differently. And so a solution for them could be that they want to start running. That's one way they could solve their problem. But a course called Running Tips is never going to be the exact language that most people are searching for because it's not a solution. So, overall, the best courses, the ones that sell at all different price points, are the ones that provide a clear solution to someone's problem. And there's this customer awareness journey that a lot of marketers talk about. People are going from unknown, like they have no idea they have a problem, no idea what a solution is, and then they move through different phases. One of them is problem aware. They know, let's say they're a business owner, they know they're not earning the kind of money that they want, or they're spending way too much time working with clients and they're feeling really burnt out. That's a problem, but they may not know the solution yet. The next step in is being solution aware. So now let's say that business owner has decided, you know what I'm going to do is launch an online course. That is the solution to how I'm going to scale my business without taking on more clients and feeling so burnt out. And I think the fastest way to earn more money as a course creator is to choose a solution that people are aware of because it just takes a little bit less convincing. As your business and your course grow, absolutely, you'll talk to people who are problem aware. You'll start to educate them and say, do you know what? I think this could be a great solution for you. But for the very first time, I think if you position your course as a solution to someone's problem and then you go seek out that exact person, then you'll have an easier time finding that profitable idea.
I cannot agree more. It sounds, just hearing you talk about it, it's like, oh, well, of course. Why wouldn't I think of that originally? Because that makes so much more sense instead of searching through the hundreds of thousands of people online to find all unique problems rather than building something that covers one concrete solution. It's like, it seems like common sense, but it's just something that we don't think of.
My sisters and I call it uncommon sense because it's one of those ahas you hear it and you're like, oh, I think that's clicking, but it's really not commonly known or practiced. And one of my favorite teachings, we talked about this all the time at Teachable, but your course provides a transformation. And I think maybe that language helps some people. But I think if you imagine where your student is today, there's a gap between where they are now and where they want to be. And your course is the tool that they're going to use to get there. But there are many tools. They could hire a service provider. They could read a book. They could buy a physical product. They could take your course. So there are a lot of different tools that can get somebody to the outcome. And it's your job to figure out which place in your category, your niche, is your course going to be the best solution and for who? Because that's another way course creators go wrong is they want to have their course appeal to everyone,
Hmm.
but different people just need a slightly different take even within the same topic. And it's very hard to teach many diverse students at once. They can be diverse in who they are and their person and their experiences, but they should have some sort of shared identity, whether it's that they're all beginners or they're all advanced. Or if they're parents, maybe they all have kids under 2 or they all have kids over 18. So just finding common ground means that you're able to speak in a shared language, which means you're going to serve all of them better because people want personalized solutions. So you want to position your program as a personalized solution.
Podcasting remotely can be so intimidating, but Zencaster has really allowed me to put all of my worries and challenges aside when it comes to podcast production with their all in one web based solution. Zencaster is so easy to use, especially with guest interviews. I love how Zencaster uses local recording, and believe me, this comes in handy when I'm interviewing guests and have Luana barking on my line. I can easily edit my local recording without interfering with the guest audio. It is so clean and simple. And I also love how they have a secured cloud backup, so I know my audio is always safe. Zencaster seriously has everything covered with ease with so many more incredible features. I want you to have the same easy experience as I do for all of my podcasting and content needs. So if you go to zencaster.com/pricing and enter promo code detailed diary, you'll get 30% off your first 3 months. That's Zencastr.com/pricing, promo code detailed diary. I agree. And I think it's interesting because a lot of business owners are already doing this type of targeted ideal client with the product or service that they're already selling. And I think making that transition to online resources and course creation, we still have to bring over that ideal client and target audience. And it may be a little bit different than what we're used to, but it's still so important to really define that because it just helps you get so much more clarity when it comes to building your program and the way that you're marketing it and all of that. Now, going back to the life cycle and kind of how you set up your course timeline, would you kind of say that that initial like beta period is kind of like a pre-order type of deal? I'm trying to relate it back to like online like e-commerce terms because that's what it kind of seems like.
That's exactly what it is. So I have 3 different stages in the course life cycle, the way that I talk about it at Wit and Wire. The first stage I call validate. So this is exactly like having a product, pre-selling it, potentially putting up a wait list. You're just trying to see if anybody will bite. And I think the way that it is so different from the other 2 stages is the fact that your goal really is to make sure that people are not just saying they might pay you, but that they actually pay you. So your goal is to have a small group. Even 3 students can work, but I would say 3 to 20, depending on your existing audience size. You want them to enroll. They all start on the same date. You go through the experience together. It's up to you. You can either release new pre recorded content every week, or you can actually just do a live workshop, let's say over Zoom. In both cases, the key is that you do not make the whole course before you sell it. It is a pre sale. Some people call it a beta program. I like the term founders round because I think it means something special and new. I think people want to be founders. So that's why I like that branding of it. But that's so different from the other 2 phases, and the marketing strategies are a lot different too. So you won't do a webinar, you won't do a challenge, you won't do any of those things. I don't want people to run ads just yet unless you're really savvy, because if you start to run, let's say, a webinar, you won't know if you make no sales, if it was because the offer didn't work, or if it's because the webinar didn't work. So in the validate stage, that's the goal. You just wanna get paid and you wanna develop the curriculum, and at the end of the stage, you will have a finished program ready to sell. So, should we move into stage 2?
Moving on to stage two.
Yep. So, stage 2, I call elevate. This is where you start to learn from the first round. You have your finished program, but when you can enroll a second round of students, this is your opportunity to figure out, are there small pieces that you can improve either in the curriculum or ways that you can make your life easier. So, in the validate stage, you do a lot of things that don't scale. I like to talk to students personally. I like to really go out of my way. And I think that's something a lot of us don't do. We are so interested in automating, which I love, by the way. But I think when you're small, you have this superpower of being able to give that kind of personalized experience that bigger businesses can't do. So I like to do things that don't scale. And then in the second stage, you're asking yourself, okay, maybe instead of doing a lot of one on ones, maybe I do a live weekly group coaching. Maybe I've learned that instead of just videos, there are some places I could have printables or worksheets and you can elevate your experience. And then this is also where you start to elevate your marketing. Maybe you do test out some of these other strategies like a live masterclass or a challenge or just getting more people involved and talking about it online. And then eventually, the third stage is automate. This is where you can start, if you'd like, to put your course into more of an evergreen mode. So, I have a program called the Podcast Launch Accelerator, and it takes business owners through the process of launching a podcast and getting their first 1,000 downloads. And you can join at any time. I don't pretend that it's closed, I don't do any of that. I think that the urgency that comes with that program is the fact that people want to launch a podcast. And I do offer some bonuses throughout the year. For example, I run some student challenges inside the community. So I say, if you join by this date, we'll all go through it together. So there's a little bit of accountability. But you can just see that the reason I call it a course lifecycle is because I think that the strategies that you use to teach and the strategies that you use to market are different at each stage. And where a lot of course creators go wrong is they try to jump ahead to stage 3, which I think is bigger and scarier and more intimidating. So I would just encourage everyone to have that stage 1, that validate mentality. You only need a few students. You're just trying to get paid to develop curriculum and make sure that you have a profitable offer before you focus more on marketing.
I think that's wonderful. And the way you break it down is just so easy to understand. I know, just speaking from personal experience, when I first got into the world of online resources and course creation, it's like you try to look up what's the right thing to do, what's not the right thing to do. And you just dive down a rabbit hole of like timelines and this and that and the other thing. And it just becomes so incredibly overwhelming and very confusing too, that you just, at least for me personally, you just kind of like throw that all out the window. And it's like, all right, I'm just going to throw something up because I can't even be bothered with trying to figure out the right or wrong way to do things. And just hearing the way that you've explained your timeline and life cycle, I think is just very easy to understand. It really makes logical sense. And I'm excited to kind of learn more about it and maybe implement it just in my own business moving forward. I'm like selfishly here thinking like, oh, this is something that I could probably do moving forward. Now, I know that also with course creation, there's kind of a lot, well, not kind of, there are a lot of decisions to make. One large decision being whether or not to create like one large online course or maybe lean towards like a membership type approach. So, how would you kind of approach weighing either offer and like what would work best for your own business?
Great question. And I also just want to say, we were talking about all the different things that you might see other course creators doing, all these strategies. I actually think that's one of the hardest parts about being a business owner is that we're not deciding between good strategies and bad strategies. They're all good strategies, and it can feel so paralyzing, I think, trying to decide which one is right for you. So, I think one of the reasons that I've been able to scale my business is because I say no to a lot of things. And then other ideas, I just say, you know what? This is a not now idea. And then I literally just have a place of saved ideas and I'm like, this is a later idea. So some ideas are now ideas, some ideas are later ideas, and some ideas are just not for me. And then I think it gives me a lot more freedom. It makes me feel like I'm running a business that feels like me. And then I don't feel as stressed if I see another business owner saying, "Oh, you have to do this strategy. It's totally great for everyone." I just don't believe business is one size fits all, and I think
Mhm.
that's the beauty of it in a way.
Totally agree. I absolutely love that. And I love the not now because we all have a difficult time saying no. And it's okay to just like throw things on the back burner and keep in the back of your mind, not to do like right this second. And the paralysis of decision making when, like you had just mentioned, you know that maybe both options could work for you. And it's just trying to figure out like what's going to work best for me, my business, my audience. It can be so overwhelming that you just say, you know what, I can't make a decision. This is so.
Exactly. And nothing is permanent either. I find that very freeing where I can decide to do something for 3 months and then stop. Or I can decide I'm not going to do something for 3 months and maybe it is the right fit later. Like, even for me, I literally never used TikTok, not even as a person, like a human being
Yeah.
outside of her business. But then, and I've never thought I'd be on it. But then a lot of trends were showing that it would be growing in 2022. And I said, you know what? I'm going to just try this for a month and see how it goes. So I think you have to give yourself the kindness of the freedom to change your mind and not be so hard on yourself if you made a decision before that ends up not fitting for the long term, or if you put something off for later and then you decide to pick it up. I just think you can't possibly know all of the answers. So instead, I just try to enjoy the process of trying new things and then deciding they're not for me.
I completely agree. And I think it relates back to trying to get into this industry as well and making decisions on what works best for you. Like I talk a lot of times to just other friends that I have in the industry about online resources, and it may be courses, it may be digital resources and other things that you can include in programs like memberships or monthly types of things like that that aren't just a one size fits all course. So, do you have any experience kind of doing something a little bit different than just your standard like online course that you see, whether it's like subscriptions, membership, or even just digital resources to include into those types of offerings? So, it's not just someone like showing up face to face, which I know is really scary for a lot of people.
Yes, I've sold digital templates. I've sold my own services one on one.
Mhm.
I've sold consulting packages, courses, programs, memberships. I've tried a little bit of all of them. And I want to answer your question about courses versus memberships because I have seen them work really well for different business owners. But for me, I think that courses are, I'm not going to say easier to sell. I think they're easier to wrap your head around because, as we were talking about before, there's a clear outcome, there's a clear solution that you're providing. And so, at least in my life, I don't often think about, years out. I might have big picture goals, but right now I need something that I can do within a month or within 3 months. And I think where a course can really shine is that it's very easy to understand that by the end of this course, you're going to
Mhm.
launch a podcast, you're going to have an Etsy shop. There's going to be something at the end of that program. With a membership, I think where maybe people go wrong where their memberships don't sell is that if they're trying to have that same outcome, let's say you have an ideal buyer who wants to set up an Etsy shop. If they don't already have one, it may be too far ahead for them to think, how do I commit to this every month and then keep it
Mhm.
growing? So their first step is just getting it to exist. And that's where I think a course comes in handy. Then on the other hand, I think where a membership can do really well is for somebody who is in a practice or a state of forming a habit. So, meditation, yoga, anything health and fitness related, or even let's say you're a social media manager. There are constantly new trends coming out in your industry. And so, anything that is consistently evolving, I think could work well as a membership. But I know for me with course creation, I often, as a buyer, prefer courses because I don't want to decide every month if I want to keep renewing a membership. So I actually think that selling a course, because it's either a one time purchase or it's a payment plan, but it only had a one time buying decision, it's a lot less taxing on your buyers. So I think you're able to have both a higher perceived value and perhaps less stress on your person overall. So I think that's why I personally gravitate toward courses, but I think memberships have a really great space for a lot of business owners.
I feel the exact same way. And just hearing you talk about it, putting yourself just in the position of a buyer, it's much easier to commit to, okay, I'm going to get this course with this outcome. This is what I'm going to learn, and this is what I'm going to take away from it in, a one shot deal rather than something, it's like anything in life where there's a longer commitment over time. It's like, I don't know. We're in a very like need it now culture as well. So it's kind of like a course is very much, oh, well, I can get it, learn it quick, 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 rather than something spanning over the course of time. So I definitely agree. And I think it's interesting just to look into everything as well. And I know we've talked so much about tips and mistakes and things that we can focus on when we're going through this process, but what would you kind of say that you've seen first time course creators maybe make mistakes on as they're new to entering this world, whether that be in course creation or marketing or anything that kind of sticks out as I don't like to say mistakes because they're all learning experiences, but anything that sticks out that you've seen numerous times over newer course creators?
We talked about the big one, which is the sales approach, where it's a lot of work to put together a webinar or an email campaign or ads. All of those strategies take up a lot of work. And the strategy itself is not a mistake. It's just doing it before you have proven that someone will pay you for the course. And then I think to focus on a new approach, I agree with you. It's not a mistake. It's just something I wish more people could see opportunities about. When you are a new course creator, I think the technology can feel very daunting. Even being on camera is very intimidating for a lot of people. But there are a couple of ways that you can very much make the experience feel very low tech and very doable. So, one of them is to record videos that are just of your screen, just of slides. If you see inside of my courses, I do a lot of demos of the tech tools that we use for course creation, but a lot of them are very minimal, simple slides because I know that what students need is value. And so I don't focus on like very fancy designs. You don't need any of that. You can get free templates. Even one example for a resource could be slidescarnival.com. They have tons of great free Google Slides and PowerPoint templates. And so just kind of get it out of your head. Like you don't need to be a fancy designer. I think having it just look professional and clean, maybe choosing like a color and a font to use
Mhm.
throughout, that's perfect. And then the other thing that I think eases the process is knowing that you don't have to record long videos and that you don't have to always use video. So when I do videos, I try to keep them under 15 minutes because I want people to feel like it's doable. They could sit down and just take one action at a time to move through the course. If I see I have to sit down for an hour, I think that feels a little more intimidating.
Mhm.
And on top of that, I also like shorter videos because then when somebody is using the course as a reference, they see the outline and they can find exactly what they need. So they know here's the exact video on pricing my course instead of just a whole hour long video on the marketing process, let's say. And then for me as a course creator too, I think a lot of people are so worried that the course is permanent because people use the words like passive income about digital courses, digital products, and that's absolutely true. But I think the misconception is that you make it once and then you never touch it again. I think the best course creators are always listening to the needs of their students as well as any changes in their industry. So if you make these short videos, you can take the pressure off yourself. It does not need to be perfect the first time. What you can do is then collect feedback from people, and then you don't have to re record all of them. But maybe you learn, you know what, that 7 minute video, now I get it a little bit better. I understand what students really needed. Let me just record that one again. And I don't do a ton of edits with any of those videos. So that's one approach. The other is to do live workshops. I think, especially in our current 2022 era, people are more used to being on Zoom than ever, and they're craving community and other people who are in the same boat as them. And a lot of people who join my programs, they join for the knowledge, but they're also joining for the accountability. They're joining because they want other people around them who have the same goals. Like I know when I launched my first podcast, I think it was 4, maybe 5 years ago, I didn't know anyone with a podcast. So at times it felt very lonely. It felt like I was just kind of in it on my own. And so you, as the course creator, are actually creating this space where people can bond with other people. It can look different for everyone. You don't have to deliver live classes. You don't have to do any live elements. You don't have to have a community. But I think some of those more interactive pieces are definitely the future direction of a lot of courses.
That's great. That was so extremely helpful. I really wanted to touch on the technology aspect of things, and I'm really happy that you brought that up because that is definitely a pain point I feel like for a lot of people that comes across as very intimidating and overwhelming when in reality, like everything we've talked about, there's so many options. There's not a one size fits all, like you have to do this or you have to know that. And there's so many opportunities to work with what suits best for you, your like comfortable standard of how you want to approach things, and I think that that is really important. This has been such an informative chat. I feel like I just personally have learned so much more, and my wheels have been turning about my own business. And I know that everyone listening probably feels the same way and feels really inspired to maybe even look into a new aspect of expanding their business that they may not have thought of before. At the end of all of my podcast episodes, we have like a little figurative, detailed diary that we just write like a lasting note of inspiration to the listener. So if you have just any lasting note that you want to end off with for anyone who may be listening as a note of inspiration.
Yeah. I don't know what most people do. I'm going to start off and say, dear listener, I know running a business is hard. It feels like every decision that you make is so permanent. It feels like there's a right answer that we're all searching for. And if we don't get it right, our businesses will fail. But what holds us back often is the feeling that we're not yet good enough. We don't have these skills yet. And the only way that you can develop those skills is just to start doing things little by little. And instead of thinking about everything as all or nothing, I have to go all the way or I do nothing at all, instead just think, what if I did a little bit more today? What if I save some of these things for later? So I just want people to show more kindness to themselves and remember that part of being a business owner is enjoying the process of running your own business. If something feels right to you, do more of it. If it doesn't, let it go. And you don't have to do what works for other people. I think it's all about finding what works for you, what feels creative, what feels energizing, and just giving yourself the freedom to say, if I didn't do it perfectly, that doesn't make me a failure. My worth is not tied to my business's worth. I'm still a great person, and I have great offerings, products, services, product shops that are helpful to tons of people, and they need to hear about it.
That's wonderful. My worth isn't tied to my business's worth. I need to frame that and put that up.
We all do.
It is so important. Well, Melissa, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I will leave all of your information, links, social media pages, everything down below so that everyone can find you. And I look forward to just following along with your business as it grows.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much to Zencaster for sponsoring the Detailed Diary podcast. Zencaster has made my podcast production process so much simpler with their all-in-one production suite. This episode was made on Zencaster, and if you like what you hear, be sure to use my promo code to start podcasting for free today. If you go to Zencaster.com/pricing and enter promo code Detailed Diary, you'll get 30% off your first 3 months. That's Zencastr.com/pricing, promo code Detailed Diary. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Detailed Diary podcast. Make sure to rate and subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. Be sure to join our community over on Instagram at Detailed Diary Podcast and introduce yourself. I'm looking forward to meeting you over there, and I will see you next Wednesday for a brand new episode. Until then, have an amazing week.